is where the coffee bean comes from. The cherry is the origin of the coffee bean. Can you believe it? But I'm at a farm in Ethiopia, Mr. Mohammed, in the west, and I wanted to show some of the work that's being done here that's really unique for Ethiopia. So these trees here have really healthy, they have great yield. Some of them were 3 years old. Let's look. There it is. By the way, check this out. See these are the little babies. These are fruits that aren't picked, that fall down, and these are little coffee trees that are growing. So that's how coffee would reproduce. Normally, the fruit takes a long time to sort of decay, and over that period, eventually the green bean contacts the soil and the conditions are right for germination. But this tree's not that old, even though it looks really big, and it's really tall. It's quite healthy, and this coffee's not ready to pick, but it's producing really well. The problem in Ethiopia, let me see if I can find an example. See, he's working really good on his farm, so it's a little hard to find, but I pretty much could point the camera anywhere else and find an example of coffee that's very old. I'm not going to find it here. It's very old and become very unproductive. Coffee grows new leaves and fruit from the herbaceous part of the branch. So when you look at a branch, and I'm not an agronomist, but down near the trunk, we have the woody part, the wood, and then around here, we're getting into new herbaceous growth. And out here is where you're going to get new leaf production from these nodes here, or those nodes will produce fruit. And the problem is in fact, there's a nice example of new leaves. And I think over here we can see that a lot of these have flower. So what's really unique here, I'll get to it, is that some of these older trees here, he has chosen to stump. So there's a project that we've been supporting called the Stumping Project, because while stumping coffee is well known in other countries and practiced in Central America to rejuvenate coffee plants and keep them in production, it's rare in Ethiopia. The reason it's rare is just a tradition that if you cut down part of the tree, you're not going to grow any coffee. And while that's true initially and for the first season, in the second season you're going to get an abundance of new growth, the herbaceous growth that you need to produce more coffee fruit, which you can sell. So it's kind of been a hard sell to get farmers in this area to take the coffee out of production and stump it. But here's a really good example of stumping. I mean, obviously first you see it's short. Here we have some really nice coffee flower coming, and you see production, and you see down here that this tree was stumped. And when it was stumped, there were 2 new nodes that are main trunks that were produced, and those are going to be very productive for a period of years till it needs stumping again. So this pruning technique that is a little counterintuitive to the kind of cultural practice of coffee farmers here is actually really important to get more coffee. And one of the things you hear people talk a lot about in sort of people that are focused on farmers being successful and helping coffee farmers is they talk about the price the coffee farmers are getting. But if you have, 500 kgs of coffee cherry to sell, versus 1,000, price is only part of the equation. How much coffee do you have to sell? So volume is really important, and that's where stumping comes in, and like good agricultural practices. What I like about this is Mr. Muhammad is actually a kind of leader in the area. He was the cooperative chairman of the Katamaduga Cooperative Union that we buy from, and he has his own farms, some farmland and facilities. He's done pretty well, and he's in a better position than a really small farmer to put these ideas into practice. But what I like is that in a way, he's made himself a model farmer, so people can emulate what he, as a successful local businessman, has done, and anybody can do this. And what you're seeing is a rejuvenated, very healthy tree, and stumping is an investment in the future. So the stumping project is implemented by TechnoServe NGO. We work with Falcon, was the people who brought us on board, and we've been donating funds to it for agricultural training and for the tools. It's actually really important how you stump. You don't want to just go in with a machete and hack at a tree. So you'll see that they do very clean cuts at an angle so they don't get rot from the weather adversely affecting the core trunk. So that's a little bit about stumping, about Ethiopia, and about the stumping project, which last year it was brought to 21,000 coffee farmers, and this year they're doubling that in the south and the west to another 21,000 farmers that they're going to support with materials, tools, education. All right. From Goma, Ethiopia. Bye. So here's an example of what happens to a farm that's not been rejuvenated. It's definitely intentionally planted. And I think this is a little bit of an extreme example. You don't normally see a tree that's this hairy with moss, but it does happen. But this is what you'll see a lot in the south. I'm out in Gera region in the west, is trees that farmers just will not cut, prune. And what happens is you just get diminishing returns over time. You just get less and less and less coffee. In this case, the tree really can't even ripen the coffee. It's green and then it just goes brown. Could be another issue. But it just doesn't have the energy. It takes a lot of energy to produce fruit. A flowering, fruiting tree needs a lot of energy. And it's very beautiful. But this is almost a graveyard of coffee here. These are so unmanaged. So all the woody growth here, let's look at this. I mean, so all your main trunks are all old woody growth, and then even coming here, and only here, right out at the end, do you actually see new herbaceous growth, where you have a chance of producing new leaves and new coffee. And you get some cherry back in here. But basically, not trimming means that the tree, it doesn't produce fruit or leaves or new branches off, well, it does produce some new branches, as you can see, like right here, off of woody growth. But your production just goes down and down and down. So what you need to do is do heavy pruning, rejuvenate trees. In this case, I think you're at the point where you take them out and you have to replant, though. Very beautiful.